Okay, welcome to another episode of Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. Let me adjust my camera here a little bit. Downside of being live and not pre-recording and having a director or a producer to kind of fix things. Anyway, hey, Daichi Miller here from Warrior Concepts in East Central Pennsylvania for those of you who are close and local and want to stop by for training. Anyway, so another episode of Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. So what we're taking a look at this week is kind of a part two. Maybe I should have written that up here. So not that I haven't done knife defense at other points in the past, but you'll see the theme here in a bit. Okay, so if you're on our early notification list, you got things, and you already have a heads up on what I'm going to cover, or at least part of it. And if not, well, then you need to be on the list, right? So like and follow on YouTube. Well, anyway. So what we're taking a look at with this one is kind of a part two to what I covered, I think 2 episodes ago, right? And so this comes courtesy of Sensei Ekbom in Israel, Ruben, one of my guys that follows me. And so he's wants some ideas and tactics and whatnot for dealing with what he calls a terrorist attack. Now, everybody calls these things something different in other, in different places and whatnot. But apparently, this is quite common when people do things. So I don't know if there's a kind of a translation thing or whatnot, but we're definitely going to be talking about somebody who is enraged and just coming in hot and intent. Okay, not that all attackers don't. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Okay. But what I want to start off with is, again, kind of springboarding off of the previous one. So I'll try to remember to leave a link to that particular episode, because there were other lessons in that one that are just as important to this. Perspective's a little bit different. And so what I wanted to do was not make it a duplicate kind of thing. Okay. And then if you were in on the Friday virtual training, so we have these Friday classes, right? There's the link to it, right? We have these Friday classes that springboard off of what we're doing. Okay. And again, I should probably put out a little disclaimer here. If you're one of the regulars, then you know what the focus is. If you found this, I don't know, it's in my future and whatever, you found this and you were expecting another demonstration-based dancing monkey kind of training, then you should know by now, right? I've been talking for a couple of minutes. You're in the wrong place. Okay, this is for the upper, intermediate, and advanced level students, or people who want to get to that stage, where we're focusing on strategic thinking, tactical operation, those kind of things. I'm not demonstrating techniques. Okay, that's what we have these other classes for. Or you can take these lessons, apply it to what you already know, or take these lessons and apply it to what you see as you jump around through all the YouTube or Vimeo or whatever videos. Okay. All right. So again, what we're looking at here is a very, very close range kind of thing. Right. So again, the topic, right? This is what we're really going to focus on today. And I mentioned in the previous training, but what we're focusing on are these high overhead, I call them psycho style, and I'll talk about that in a minute, right? These stabbing, hacking knife attacks that come in this way, right? During that previous one, during that Friday training, we tended to focus on either free attacking or the bad guy grabbing you. We did clothing grabs, we grab behind the neck, those kind of things, and then just coming in and freaking ice picking this person, right? Just multiple stabs and jabs, right? So how do we deal with shit like that? Okay, well, that's what we're here for. Okay, but please note that again. Let me talk about a different type of person who tends to jump around on these different things, right? If you're looking for invincibility, go to anime or go to a Marvel movie or something like that, okay? Where everything works out in the end and the hero always lives. And that is a uniquely Western, if not American, kind of focus on movies, right? Other cultures and societies have a much more realistic thing that, like, shit doesn't always work out, okay? This is not about being invincible, although those words are kind of tacked on because it sells more books, sells more programs or whatever. I don't sell as many, maybe because I'm just not going to bullshit people, right? But the reality is these are scary situations, okay? And so what the training is offering to you, any training, right? Any teacher, what they're offering you is the ability to live longer, to give yourself a greater advantage, to be harder to kill, right? Let's be very, very clear, right? As strong and as resilient and as adaptable as the human body is, we are all easy to kill. You are easy to kill. I am easy to kill, right? So the best that I can offer, the best that my teachers gave me, and the reason why I don't just pick and choose, cherry pick things because that's what I want to believe in, or that's what I want to, do, or that's a cool move or whatever. I don't know what the danger is going to look like when it shows up. I don't know how many attackers I'm going to have to deal with. I don't know what, I don't know anything, right? So I need to load my toolbox with as many possibilities or as many solutions or tools for handling those different situations or possibilities as possible. But that's me, right? I'm always going to do me just like you're always going to do you. Okay. All right. So that being said, let's kind of start here. Let me just check my notes here. Again, thanks to Ruben for this suggestion. Again, I didn't quite handle what he was envisioning in the last episode. Not that it wasn't all good stuff, because I had lots of emails from people that were like, "Holy shit, that was awesome." But Ruben was thinking more in this direction, right? This kind of attack. So there you go. All right. So let's just look at this thing, right? When I called this a psycho attack, right? I mean, right. Why would I call it a psycho attack? Well, let's cover a couple of different perspectives that students could go into, or viewers could look at, right? And I think the first one, if you don't know the exact reference I'm talking about, right, it can be really easy to slip into a psycho, right? What we might call somebody like a psychopathic killer, right? So the enraged, we'll call him passionate, right? An intent killer who's looking to overwhelm and dominate, right? And in some places in the world, this is the serial killer, right? This is the surprise attack. This is the, it could be just the person who got pissed off, and what do they say? He just snapped, right? And then picked up something and whatever, right? You're on a work site, it's a screwdriver, or you picked up whatever, right? In other places, like where Ruben lives, it's a preferred terrorist kind of thing. But either way, right? This reference that I'm making, okay, is that this term became popularized and or memorialized way back in the day. Remember, I started training in 1980, so I don't know where you were in 1980, but apparently that was a long time ago. My memory says it was just a couple of weeks ago. But anyway, there was a movie that came out called Psycho, okay? And there was a really famous scene in this movie, right? And you often, I think in the email that I sent out, it might have had the word shower in quotes, okay? And that's what it was. It was this shower scene where this woman is showering, and next thing you know, the curtain gets ripped aside, and then there's this, cool music, like that kind of thing, right? Where she just gets hacked to bits, right? And so because that was popular and it was an easy reference, the teachers and or those of us who are seniors that were helping other people, we just tended to gravitate toward using this as an expedient, right? So if we said, psycho, or we said, okay, what we're going to work on now is a defense against this shower stall stabbing type attack. Everybody knew that it was this overhead stabbing, hacking kind of thing, right? It was a surprise moment, and next thing you know, the victim's a bloody mess, right? And I don't mean that in the way that my British friends might think, right? A bloody mess, like, okay, I guess, but literally, okay. So That's really where we're coming at this from. Okay, so this is one of those situations where it's not that you won't see the person coming. Okay, if you do, then there are other things that are in there, and I'm going to cover some of these things at the end, like defensive priorities and whatnot. But we're going to be very, very clear when we get there that these are niceties. If you have the time or the wherewithal or whatever, fantastic. But you're going to use what you can. Again, I'll talk about that when I get there. Okay. So a big problem with this attack or this type of attack, right? And the problem with knife defense in general, and I mentioned this in the other training, and I probably mention it in every knife defense class, seminar, video I do online, or whatever, is that if you don't, well, it's not about if you don't. One of the problems that can come up is we're learning these techniques, and students can lean into, or practitioners can lean into, this idea that because I learned how to handle it, then when that kind of situation pops up, then I have to handle it. There are very few people in this world that have to handle any kind of really dangerous, deadly kind of situation. Okay. And I can count on 3 fingers off the top of my head, right? Police officers, professional security, and or soldiers, military. Okay. Everybody else has, if they have the wherewithal, tiny Nikes don't fail me now, right? Or tiny Tabi or whatever you're wearing. Okay. So I'm going to mention this later on, but this bears repeating. Knife attacks are one of the most, if not the most, dangerous scenario that you could be forced to deal with. Okay. So rule number 0, it doesn't even make it to number 1. Okay. This should be the default setting, right? If you want to think that maybe I'm a pussy or whatever because I'm not going to step up all the time, well, think whatever you want. People don't think I know anything because I'm fat, old, and bald. Okay. They can do them, right? But if you don't have to deal with a knife wielding attacker, don't. Okay. Don't. There's so many advantages that somebody with a knife has, even over somebody with a gun. Right? You're defending against somebody with a gun, right? He doesn't have to get up close and personal. If you're walking around town, somebody steps up on you and sticks a gun at you, man, to me, that is one of the most lucky situations that you could ever be involved in. And I know people tend to freak out because they don't understand it, but unless you've ever been in that bubble, right? Whether it was your weapon they were fighting over and tried to shoot you in the head with your own, okay, wearing a badge, anyway. So, you were in combat or whatever. If you've never been in the scenario, a lot of this logic, this combat logic, just sounds counterintuitive. It sounds backwards, right? But that's the point. That's why we need a teacher or a guide, not just that knows the cool moves, but who's been in that bubble. Hasumi Sensei's pointed this stuff out for years. Right? It doesn't matter what somebody's rank is. They could be a white belt or a no belt or halfway through the rank, and you could be a 10th dan or whatever. If you have no fight experience and they do, right? Or they've been attacked or they've been a bouncer or they've been in that world, then you need to talk to them. Okay. Hasumi Sensei had me write an article about just one of these situations. Right? But his point has always been, they may not be able to tell you anything about Seion or Shiaku or whatever kata name or this or that skill or whatever, but the piece of information that you will get from them is how you better be training, things that you need to consider and make sure it's a part of your training paradigm or your framework, or all this is just going to be an interesting pastime. Okay. And as one of my other teachers used to say, if you screw this shit up when you need it the most, your family better look good in black. I mean, we know we look good in black, however. Right? So again, if you don't have to, don't. So we always assume, my approach is always, if we're talking about this stuff and you're actually in a situation where you're doing something that you've learned or practiced about knife defense in the dojo or in your academy or self-defense club or whatever, then you were forced to be there, either by policy or because you can't get out, right? So let's be really, really clear, okay? So anyway, psycho, we get all that kind of stuff, right? So again, in this type of situation, in this type of an attack, your assailant is going to be less concerned about surgical precision and more on three things, three goals, right? So I'll outline those things here in a minute. But when I talk about surgical precision, right? It's like these big orchestrated attacks and things like that, or it's he's going for a certain part of your body, that kind of thing. It's been my experience, and my wife's as well. My wife was a deputy coroner for a local county for a couple of years, and in situations like this, it wasn't like a century takeout technique where they come up and they're going for something very specific or whatever. In attacks like this, it is the rare situation, and I mean like 0.1% out of 100, right, where the victim only has I don't know, 3 or less stab wounds. Okay, and that's really conservative. Okay, because he's not trying to be surgically precise. He's overwhelming, right? And again, this may be a criminal attacker, maybe just be somebody who gets the rocks off by killing, right? That serial killer kind of guy. And there's different categories, there's different mindsets, those kind of things. Or it could be somebody absolutely fucking pissed off and just going to town, or they're having a psychotic break. They're having negative interaction with medications that they're on. There's all kinds of reasons, right? And anybody that's studying martial arts, right? Remember the samurai, often these villages and clans had schools. Right? I visited one in Japan up on a mountaintop that is the clan that was used as the basis for a relatively recent Japanese TV series, right? Out in the middle of freaking nowhere. They didn't even have paved roads. But they set up a museum once the place became popular. But what was still there was the original dojo that looked like an airplane hangar, because they worked archery and they worked spear and naginata stuff inside this dojo. But adjacent to that dojo that was still standing was a school, right, where Heiho was taught, military strategy, okay? Principles and concepts from Sun Tzu's Art of War, all these things, right? So again, anybody that's studying this stuff needs to, I'm not telling you what to do, but I believe that anybody that's studying this stuff earnestly needs to get past fixation on physical skills as quickly as possible. You're always going to learn those. You're always going to learn those. You're always going to learn Henka. Those things are going to get tweaked as that ability goes higher, right? But remember, there's three perspectives that a teacher passes on the art from, okay? Especially in stuff that we're doing, okay? There's Taiden, there's Kuden, and there's Shinden. Okay? In our upcoming fall camp in November, this is 2024, so if you're watching this in the future, ignore everything I'm about to say. But it's still important. The theme for this year is body, mind, spirit integration. And so while I do have guest instructors and some of my senior guys who are going to be teaching breakout sessions on whatever, one of my shidoshi here at the dojo is going to be teaching a breakout session on cryptology, right? Codes and code breaking and those kind of things, right? Cool shit. So, but my focus is going to be on this body, mind, spirit integration. So every technique, every kata, every skill that we work on, we're going to come at it from 3 different perspectives. We're going to come at it from the taiden, which is the physical ties and body, right? Den means transmission, okay? How it gets passed on. So I'm going to demonstrate techniques. People are going to learn them. I'm going to show things with my body so they can mimic it with their body. Everybody knows how that works, okay? But that's only one part of it, right? Then we're going to come at the same technique. Once they get the moves down, we're going to come at the same technique from the mental state, Where should your mind be, right? This is the level of kuden, right? Which is knowledge, understanding, those kind of things. You're using your mental faculties. So part of this is where is your head at each point in a given technique or kata, right? Way too many people fixate on the end, and then they make a whole shit ton of mistakes along the way because they're not paying attention to what they should be paying attention in the moment they're in, okay? And I don't mean a 60-second moment, since most self-defense situations are over in 2 to 10 seconds. It's very, very different, okay? But it's that, but it's also accumulated knowledge over time, learning these principles, concepts, those kind of things. What should your priorities be? What should I be looking for? How do certain fighters, right, how do they do things? Certain fight styles, certain personality types, certain body makeups, right? Whether he's bigger and bulkier or he's thin and wiry and whatnot. How these people tend to, it's not a guarantee, but how they tend to lean into certain types of attack preferences, right? And so if you know those things, it gives you a huge fucking advantage over, like, my Tiger Claw can beat your Cobra Hiss, or whatever the fucking Kung Fu Saturday or Saturday Kung Fu Theater shit is. Anyway, so there's that, and then there's Shinden, which is everything from life skills to, in the context of a fight, intention, energy, connection, those kind of things, right? It's very, very difficult to pass the 5th Dan test in Bujinkan. While lots of people have gotten lucky, it's difficult to pass it if all you're focused on is, guessing and being able to roll out of the way, okay? We're picking up on saki. Saki means murderous intent. So it is the teacher or whoever's administering the test, it is absolutely their job, which is why we use a shinai and not the real thing. Or, well, I've seen people where it's been done with a boken, but they deserved it. Anyway, it's the teacher's job not only to envision, but to cut you down. Because if they're not projecting it, how the hell do you pick it up? Okay? So again, interpersonal relationships, those kind of things. And so we're going to focus on those. Okay? But there's a lot more going into this than just kind of playing around, right? So, and this shinden, this connection, this interpersonal relationship, because remember, a fight or an attack scenario is a relationship. It's a negative relationship, but it's still a relationship. Okay? So he's not in this kind of an attack. They are not focused on precision. They're focused on getting, well, let's take a look at 3 of them, right? They're focused on getting, number 1 is getting as close as possible before the attack starts. Okay? So chances are it's going to be a surprise attack. And even if he thinks, because you're looking around and you look like you're aware or whatever, if he thinks that as close as he can get is, I don't know, 6 to 10 feet away, then he's going to do something else to add to that. And I'll talk about that in a minute, okay? But he wants to get as close as possible, right? Number 2 is he's focusing on getting, what do I have here? Getting as many deep, penetrating wounds as possible and as quickly as possible, okay? This is not cut, oops, I missed, it's not that guy, okay? Just like if you were in the Friday class for the one that preceded this, so not last week's episode, but the week before that, right? We were grabbing very, very quickly, and then just as many times as you could hit somebody with that training knife, pow, 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 right? And so what I taught was 3 different taijutsu moves that had to do with only moving the target, right? Because what you're buying in situations like this are microseconds, right? You don't have time, and sometimes you don't even have time to do good taijutsu, okay? So again, I love it when the purists go correcting people's movement and all that kind of stuff, and I get it. There is right? But sometimes you don't have time for perfect. And if you don't believe me, Hatsumi Sensei wrote a book a long time ago, Tugakure Ryu Ninpo. I don't know if it's a taijutsu or not on the title, but we tend to know it as the Tenshi Jin Ryaku no Maki or the Shidoshi scroll, that kind of thing, right? And in the section on taijutsu, right, it is the preference to move your legs first. But he also puts it in there, there's times when you're not going to be able to move your legs first, so you move your torso first. Well, that's your only other option, okay? And that's natural in that moment as well. Anyway, right? His goals are to get as close as possible so that he can surprise and you know, those things, right? He wants to get as many deep penetrating wounds in as possible. And he doesn't give a shit what he attacks because, believe it or not, these serial killers and these attackers, right? They live in society. They're human. They get it, right? They also understand that most human beings have been cut at least once in their life. Nicked shaving, cut yourself, cutting the vegetables, making dinner, whatever. So we're much more respectful of a knife wound than we are a gunshot, a bullet wound, right? Because very few of us have been shot or shot at or where it's gotten close enough to, right? So he knows that even if the first couple, right, are at the face and they're shallow, or the arms that you're fending with, that kind of thing, eventually, right, not even eventually, the average person is going to be pulling away from things, locking up their body. We call it breaking their kamae, right? Or, you know, the limbs are up, and so they take a cut or whatever, and because they're afraid of getting cut, as soon as that cut or that stab happens, they pull that away to save that, and then it exposes everything else, right? So again, they're throwing as many as possible. It's kind of like when I teach combat handgun stuff, you know, we have a lot of safety factors in because we're good people, okay? But that also means we're paying attention to not having collateral damage, right? We're not just going to do what we call spray and pray, right? We're just going to unload a magazine and hope we hit them, right? Yeah, but where do the rest of them go, right? But rest assured that bad guys don't give a shit, right? Bad guys lean into spray and pray, and they don't care about safety or collateral damage, okay? They don't care about wasting ammunition. They don't care about most of the things that we tend to focus on, energy conservation, those kind of things, because they want to create as much damage in a short amount of time as possible. And, you know, and a lot of them, right, we're talking about gang life and things like that. Most of these guys know they're probably not making it to 25 years old. So, right, yep, they might get killed. They're perfectly okay with that. Right? So understanding attacker psychology is another one of those things that, in all honesty, based on the people that I've met doing this stuff, even police officers and whatnot that I've worked with, most of them don't give any consideration to this, right? Where's the trigger? How do I load the ammunition? And how do I put as many rounds downrange as possible? Okay, well, great. But that's why the average hit-miss ratio for police officers and trained security under pressure, because they only go to the range and put holes in paper, and they're very calm. They can sight, they can pull the trigger, whatever, okay? But that's why their hit-miss ratio is 80-20, right? For every 10 rounds they put down range at the bad guy, 2 will hit somewhere on the body, not necessarily in the kill zone, okay? Or in the thing that will shut his body down so he can't pew pew back at you, right? So anyway, all right, so we got getting his goals, right? Getting as close as possible before the attack starts, deep as many and as quickly, deep penetrating wounds that either break down your cover so he can get into the life-sustaining systems, or just ham. That's why I called them hacking stabs as well, not just stabbing, hacking, this kind of thing, because he's looking to break through. He's either looking to break through as much padding as you have to get to your shit that will turn you off, or to hammer at things that you're trying to protect those things, and then you expose everything else, okay? So hopefully this is pointing in certain other directions, okay? And the third one is, and they probably don't use these words, but we do. So their goal is in overwhelming your adrenal system, right? It's in activating the fight, flight, or freeze mechanism, right? Fight, flight. I know there's lots of people that say it's fight or flight. It's not fight or flight. It's fight, flight, or freeze. Right? This is one of the goals of training. One of the goals of training is to rewire the neurosystem, right? The nervous system, and then the muscle memory and what we do when this is activated, okay? So that we can act as quickly as possible, okay? Because there's a perceptual gap, there's a flinch response, those kind of things. If we're not working with those things and we just think that the technique is just going to work perfectly because my partner's coming in with slow, soft training and all that kind of stuff, we don't know what it feels like under that adrenal state. Oh, well, right? So he's trying to activate this because this gets energy going. These two are directed energy, fight or flight. I'm either moving away or I'm moving in. His preference, because of the surprise, is to activate the freeze. There's still all that energy going on, but the brain can't make a decision or the body is locked down. So you have all this energy, right? But it's locking you in place. Okay, it's the person that stands there, right? They're immobilized by fright. Okay? So that's his priority. Okay? By closing in as close as possible and overwhelming you or boxing you into a tight space. Again, we're going to cover a bunch of these things on Friday, different scenarios as to how he'll set things up so that, right, chances are you're not going to be attacked by a moron. Right? And if you are, God bless you. Okay? So, but he's going to orchestrate it so that this isn't easy, okay? Even if you can move. Okay? So again, you got something over there for this as well. All right. So again, like I said, this is part 2 of that other episode. So I put other things in that other episode that were considerations for this kind of attack, because that lesson also was about these overwhelm kind of things. And I did mention this type of an attack, but that again, there were these generalities, and what we ended up focusing on in the subsequent class was, gut things, right? This Friday, it's these, okay? All right, so let's keep on moving, all right? Okay, so what I want to take a look at are some tactical considerations. This is not cons like pros and cons. I only have so much space, right? So tactical considerations, okay? And so what we're really looking at here is these are nice to have, okay? And should be worked into your training, but ultimately you're going to need to be able to respond effectively so as to lose as few pieces, as few body parts as possible during the actual attack. Okay. So remember what I said, if you don't have to deal with one of these guys, okay, some other time we'll talk about advantages and disadvantages to dealing with a gun, dealing with a knife. That's a whole other bag of worms. Okay. But remember, knives don't have to be reloaded. Okay. There's at least 10 in everybody's house, regardless of what regulations are around about what you can carry out in public, those kind of things, right? It doesn't have to be a knife to be used like a knife, right? Box cutters, carpet cutters, scissors, all kinds of crap, right? So again, these are nice to haves. I'll give you an example in the gun world for a nice to have, but there's a debate about whether or not you're going to be able to do it in a bad situation. Okay. Now, there's a lot to be said for having a lot of experience, because the more you experience a particular thing that causes trauma to the system that fires the adrenals, over time you get desensitized to that thing. The adrenals fire less, and your cognitive functions can stay in the fight longer, and you have much more acuity, right? And so again, there's something to be said for drills and those kind of things, right? So, but in the gun world, when I take my guys out, like my preference for personal defense, and if you're living in the UK or any of these places where this is a taboo topic, right? I talked about warriors always carrying a blade, and somebody jumped on one of my videos and stuff that I was talking about illegality and things like that. Brother man, if you're still listening to this, to my stuff, right? So you can pick it apart. I don't live in the UK. Okay. So yes, we have regulations as to what the blade size and stuff like that can be here, but it's not illegal for me to carry one. It may be where you are. Okay. But if I'm not carrying one and he shows up with a knife and I can't neutralize his advantage, then all I have to stop him with is squishy, easily penetrated shit. Okay. So, okay, let's not debate things like legality when that shit's subjective based on where you live. Okay. You got to sort this stuff out for yourself. But just because I don't carry one, there's certain places, right? I go through TSA, get on an airplane, go to certain places, federal buildings, courthouses, all kinds of things, right? I have to leave it behind. Okay. So what have I done to train myself with the pens that they're going to continue to let me carry? Or what have I done to mentally be more like a James Bond or a MacGyver, where I walk into a space and immediately assess what I could use if I needed to, right? And how close any of those things are to me, right? What things are knife-like, what things are club or stick-like, what things are, right? Way too many people get fixated on the object itself, but they can't really function in a real situation because they're not carrying a hanbo or a spear or whatever. Okay. Anyway, back to the gun thing. Okay. So one of the preferences that I extend to students, even though I have other things in my arsenal as well, right, is my premise is that semi-automatic pistols, okay, I hate when people say automatic or assault or whatever, that they should be illegal. They've been illegal since the frickin' mid to late 80s. So our discussion is coming from a perspective of ignorance. I don't talk to people like that any more than I would have an argument about how my frickin' car's engine works with my 5-year-old grandson. Okay? But the reason that that's a preference is not the same as most people give as an answer in the seminars that I teach. I say, why is a pistol, right, semi-automatic pistol, what advantage does it give you over a revolver? Number one answer that most people give, and I bet that 9 out of 10 people watching this just went over it in your head, right? Number of bullets. It might give you an advantage. All the bullets do is give you a longer period of time between reloads or the need to reload. But if you suck at shooting under pressure, like that 20-80 hit miss ratio, right? You can't miss often enough to win. I don't give a shit how many bullets you carry. Right? The number one benefit or advantage that a pistol gives over a revolver is that unless I have a weapon, which is why I need to understand what I need the weapon for, and not just say, well, I'm getting it for self-defense. Okay, but what weapons are built for self-defense? You can use anything for self-defense. Shit, you can drown somebody in a bowl of Jello. Right? But what's the benefit? The benefit is, as long as it doesn't have a magazine safety, that when I drop the magazine during a reload, right, and it disconnects everything else, right? With a pistol, I can engage a hostile threat during that reload before I get the new magazine seated, right? With a revolver, what people call the cylinder is the magazine. It gets popped all the way out so I can extricate the empty shells and put the new things in, and I can't do anything with it till it pops back in place. Okay. So one of the skills I teach my students is to count their shots. Okay. It's going to end up being intuitive under this. Okay. And again, there's this debate, right? Under pressure, you're not going to be able to count your rounds. Okay. Maybe not. Okay. But then I tell students that I would rather drop a magazine during a reload because I have a sense that I'm almost out. I'd rather drop a magazine that has a round or two still in it then then fire the last round in that magazine and the slide locks back. Because under pressure, I can be pulling the trigger and nothing's going to happen if I didn't sense that happening. And then not only am I going to do my reload, but now I have to do one or two more things to get the slide forward around in the chamber so that I can be back in the fight. Right? Now, I'm not arguing with either side, whether you do it or you don't do it. I have decided that for my own safety, I'm going to train to do that. I'm going to train my students to do it, because if I do it, then there's that possibility that it can come out. I'll remember or whatever, that it'll come out in the heat of battle, under that adrenal response when your left brain is not functioning so well. Okay? But if I don't put that skill in, it's never coming out. So if I put it in, it might come out. If I don't put it in, it can never come out. And that's the same with practicing a lot of shit, right? The number of students that we have that they don't practice their rolling. I don't like to roll. Nobody gives a shit. The art doesn't care. The bad guy certainly hopes that you're not good at this stuff. Okay? Yeah, I know, but you know, I've seen Tatsumi Sensei do things, and he takes people's ability to do ukemi away from them. Yep. If he's really highly skilled, he can take that ability away. But if it's in, you at least have an option to be able to use it. If you don't put it in, for whatever reason, it can't come out. Okay? So again, these are tactical considerations that if I think about it, if I have the time, if I have a micro moment where he missed or he stabbed me, and instead of going into fear mode, this thing put me in the motherfucker, and right, I just go Hulk on him. I don't care, right? But if we have these little moments, we should have these things just in case, right? So some tactical considerations for dealing with not just this, but a lot of other knife things as well, okay, is the type of blade, okay? Type of blade. I don't mean, is it Damascus? Is it a Marine K-bar? Whatever. What I'm talking about is it truly a knife, right? And if it's a knife, is it single edge or double edge? What's the size of it? Because the size, length of the blade, determines penetration. This guy comes at me with a pen knife. Yeah, he can perforate me, but it's harder for him to get to life-sustaining organs in a way that he can shut me down very quickly. Bigger the knife, right? Is it an ice pick or something like a screwdriver or whatever that's going to act like that, right? Just a shaft with a pointy part, right? That kind of thing. Okay. Again, single edge, double edge, whatever. Okay. Because if we're learning to defend against this stuff, we need to understand the dynamics. Okay. And hopefully you learn that while you're learning how to use it. Okay. All right. So next one is the position of the working edge. Okay. So what I mean by that, I happen to have a handy dandy blade here, with shit hidden all over my dojo, right? Just looks like a stick or a decoration, right? Anyway, so is it edge out? If it's single edge, is it edge out or is it edge in? Okay. This, while you can do pulling cuts, this is much more limited. Okay. Our guys going into Vietnam, here's a story for you. Our guys going into Vietnam, Laos, and those kind of things during that era, during that war, their training before they went early on, right, at the very early stages of that war, their knife and knife defense tactics were based on earlier World War II, and actually this didn't even have to go to Vietnam, even in Korea, right, the Korean conflict that preceded it by not very long. Okay, but those guys were trained in the guerrilla type tactics and knife tactics that were taught during World War II, when, except for a small region when we went into the South Pacific and into Japan and whatnot, everybody that we were fighting were either trained in or were also Europeans or Westerners. Okay. And so they learned this stuff, and then they learned defenses against these kind of things based on this being here. And then they went to Korea and they went to Vietnam, and this is the way it was being held. And this neutralized 90% of the defenses that they had learned, because they were taught to defend against this almost exclusively, and these guys came at them, this kind of thing. So yeah, it's in there, but it's not the same. Okay, so what's the position of the edge? Okay, and then what do you know about that kind of thing? Okay, so let's see. Next, the direction of the incoming attack. Okay? The directionality. Okay, so is it just one thing? Okay, and again, right? There's other things that are going to factor into these. Okay. If you know, you know. If you don't, well, okay. But is it this, right? Is it where he's coming in this way, right? Or is it a combination where he's just all over the place, just trying to get this damn thing in, okay? Every one of these angles deserves work in the dojo so that you don't get caught with your proverbial gi pants down, having to deal with something that you've never seen before. Okay? And I promise you, there's a lot of attacks that are used based on Western methodology, based on modern attacks, based on modern style weapons, things like that, that there's not an answer in the scrolls, in the Densho specifically. Okay? This is extremely small for a Tanto in the age when Tanto were popular. Okay, extremely small. Right? The average blade length for a Tanto was closer to short sword length. It was about the length of your forearm. The dynamic on that and how he's going to get into position is way different than something much shorter. Okay, knowing that makes a huge difference. Somebody was just passing something around on Facebook that was a quote from Hatsumi Sensei about learning different swords and whatnot, and how each one, right, while there are common principles, how those things are employed, the length, all those kind of things, right, it's going to change, and how we need to know the fundamentals that cross all lines. But especially in Tanto Dori, which is what this is a form of Tanto Dori, right? Unarmed against the blade. Okay? If you have a weapon, right, use it, right? So anyway, type of blade, position of the working edge of the blade, directionality of the attack, the space, right? Or distance between the two bodies, okay? Between him and you, okay? So, okay, well, that's Kukan. I've learned about that stuff. Yeah, no, I'm not talking about that, okay? This determines his arm bend and reach, okay? Because I promise you, you've got more space to work with. Did I put that in my notes? I don't know if I did or not. Maybe it's over in another spot, okay? We know this idea of Kukan. You learn this early on, okay? But the omote side of Kukan, the way it's translated and the way a lot of people get introduced to it, is it just means space, right? It's that space between my body and his body, top of head, just outside his shoulders, just outside my shoulders to the ground. That's what I call the bubble, right? So we need to establish and understand how to control and maintain a good Kukan, because in the Western world, a properly established Kukan virtually, unless this guy does a flying leap with a jab, virtually eliminates his ability to get you with a jab. Okay, if you're training with people and you're sparring and whatnot, and they can pop you with jabs, your control of Kukan is not correct. Okay, that doesn't mean that he's not better at pressure or whatever, but that's why we have leaping and dive rolls and shit like that, because you can reset the fight to zero with a lot of space and force him to have to start all over again at closing in. Right? There's nothing in this art that says, oh, you have to do it like the MMA and the boxing matches. Okay, so let's get that shit out of our head. But this has to do with arm bend. How far does he have to reach, right? Because you have different space When the guy's got an arm bend like this and he's hacking at you, as opposed to being right on hacking straight. See, it's very, very different. Okay. So really important stuff. Okay. So another way to look at Kukan in a much more broad way is, and this is in Togakure, this is in Gyokoryu, Kotoryu, the feeling or the essence of Gyoko, of the first kata on the first scroll in the Gyokoryu, right? In the Jodiako no Maki. It's called Koku. Okay. It can be translated as false void. There's a whole bunch of ways to translate this. But the feeling of the kata, see that body, mind, spirit integration, right? The feeling that that kata is trying to get across to you, or the kotsu, the essential nature of it, is, which is ironic because they're giving you a fixed form to do it, but it's to play in space. Doesn't mean to play like a pixie in the forest, right? What it means is being adaptable, right? First kata on the first scroll of the Shiranamaki in the Koto school is called Yokuto. Same feeling. Okay. In the Shinden Furoryu, one of the primary combat principles is to find the most natural way. In the Togakure school, Kaji no Waraku is that poem that Takamatsu Sensei wrote, sums up the essence of the Togakure Ryu itself, which is to find the way, to find the most natural way. Okay. It's all in there. So when we're going beyond technique and step by step, and look how cool my moves are and shit like that, and we're actually paying attention to the invisible, right? Then we're going to start understanding space and how it changes, and how we can use it, how we can use space as a shield, right? No, it's not a physical object, but it's a whole different thing, right? So this is just one piece, okay? The distance between he and I isn't just the distance from the working edge of his weapon to my body parts. There's other things that are being affected. How far does he have to reach to get to the target? Which means if he's really trying to do it harder and faster, distance equates reduction in power to each of the things. Not a bad idea. But if he's cornered me, things change, right? So what's possible in one spatial relationship is not possible in something else. Okay, which is why Hatsumi Sensei has always said the kata are not the lesson. The kata only indicate where you need to begin with that particular strategy for controlling that particular scenario, or one like it. It's not that easy. Anyway, all right, and then number 5 here is additional force or control amplifiers. Okay, so I'm just going to put control amplifiers, and these are the things that he's using, right? His blade, how's he positioning the working edge, the directionality of his attacks, the positioning of his arm and bend and all that kind of stuff. And then these control amplifiers, okay? Just a couple of these things are things like him screaming as he comes rushing in. Talked about that before. We talked about he's going to get as close as possible, but maybe close as possible is still out of stabbing range. So what he might just do is go balls to the wall, screaming at you as he just comes screaming in at you, so that when this kicks in and your natural effect, right? Well, we have to remember that our flinch response pulls us 180 degrees away from the line of the attack. So if somebody's poking me in the eyes this way, my head's going to pull back where the face is more square. If the attack comes up this way, my head angle goes in a different direction. If it comes down, your body is wired to pull the threatened piece 180 degrees away from danger. Okay, so this attack forces this, naturally produces this, which makes it really difficult to move. Okay, but screaming, stench, right? When somebody's I would rather be shot by somebody than to be stabbed by them, because me getting shot is impersonal, right? For most shootings, he's out of range, that kind of thing, right? So does that mean I want to be shot? No, let's not confuse one thing with another, right? But if I had my choice between being in one of these scenarios and getting shot from across the street, oh, shot every time. Okay? Because the closer this guy gets and it's up close and personal, you're going to feel him. You are going to smell him, right? Whether it's the garlic from his fucking pizza last night or his pits or you're going to smell that rage. I promise you, if you've ever had somebody within that 18 to 20, give or take, inch imperial bubble around you, where you've actually been up close and personal, I promise you that you will be very selective afterwards about who you let in there. Okay, so I apologize. I had a moment. Anyway, didn't mean for my brain to go someplace, but it did. Anyway, all right. So, but these control amplifiers, it's one thing, and again, I think that most people train based on certain assumptions, right? And one of these assumptions is the person who's attacking you is a stranger. So you're going to be willing to do certain things to them, whatever, right? Because you're not connected. But what if it's a friend? What if it's a loved one? I know it's one thing to say it logically, but when you're in it, okay, those are all control things, right? These things are going to cause hesitation. They're going to cause a visceral. You're not in a two-dimensional realm. This is going to be an experience that goes well beyond the eyes, the sense of touch, those kind of things. Okay. Think about being on a ride that you like at an amusement park, but if you admit it to yourself, part of the thrill is that it scares the shit out of you and what your body is doing during that time. Right? And I'll jack that up about 10 times. Okay. Anyway, all right. So let's very, very quickly round this out with some defensive considerations. Right. So what these are, this is not niceties. This is a prioritization kind of thing, right? Just like, and I'm going to start with number one because I already started with that level 0 understanding. Okay, so number one is the thing that you do if you can, based on if you don't have to deal with a blade wielding attacker, fucking don't. Right? Your kids, your spouse, your friends, your parents, whatever, those people that love you in the world would really appreciate you not being fucking Rambo, whatever. Okay. So number one, we're starting just beyond that, right? So number one, if you can escape, do that. Even if he's poked you once or twice. Okay. So everything after that is, but what if you can't? Yeah, but it's not what if you can't. See, the lower the number, the higher the priority. So at any stage of a defensive action, if I can do that, I'm going to get the hell out. I want to get my organs, my life-sustaining systems, as far away from the working edge of that freaking weapon or this guy's intent as possible. Right? I'm going to put some other things in there, right? Because I know we're in this for a reason, right? Okay. Just don't be so controlled by your need to use your shit that you end up losing your shit. Okay. Because one of my fears is somebody else or my kids calling somebody else dad. Okay. All right. So after that one, all right. So if you can do this, do that first. Right. Number two, create distance. Okay. In Hatsumi Sensei's quest videos, if you've ever watched any of these things, and people often will skip past it, but there's nothing in those videos that don't matter, including the descriptions on the back. The write-ups on the back, there's shit hidden in there. Okay. So in those videos, when the titles pop up, right, there's this intro thing, and there's cool movement and all that, and then this thing pops up, and it says Masaki Hatsumi's martial arts of distance. Because he or she who controls the distance in a fight has the greatest advantage. And every weapon, they all have a range. They all have a distance, right, effective, then it diminishes from there. Okay, so the more increase the distance, the more he has to reach out. The thing in knife fighting, and I'm sure I have another Whiteboard Wednesday out there somewhere in the earlier stages, where the two principles with distance is that when you're dealing with a knife, you either want to be too close or too far. How the hell can you be too close? Well, you need to understand anatomically and physiologically how the body works and where it can get to very quickly and where it can't get to very well at all. Okay? Again, don't be one of these people that all their focus is on the next cool technique, because if they memorize it and they learn the name, they can impress other people who don't know anything either. Okay? So this is about control. Okay? That's what gives you power. Right? So I want to create distance. Right? Another one of these priorities is cover. This is an LS. I want to cover as many life-sustaining systems as possible. What that means is if I take a shot in that system, everything gets turned off. Okay? Your job in a self-protection or on a battlefield kind of scenario is to last as long as possible. It's not to not get cut or shot or stabbed or punched or whatever. That's not your job. That's not the promise that the training makes. Okay? Your job is to not have those things happen to the degree that the movie's over before the end. Okay? So be very clear that, yes, I need to shut this guy down as possible. Yeah, see, that's not it either. We're doing ninjutsu. Ninja would rather like do a hit and run kind of thing and escape into bushes and freaking disappear and whatnot, and make that motherfucker have to track them down and find them in a big country, right? Then win. Because the longer you stay in the fight, the greater chances that somebody sees the fight, the greater chances that somebody remembers who you are and what you look like, the greater chances that you have a shitstorm tomorrow. Okay, so be very, very careful. Right, this is not an MMA, UFC, who's got the biggest balls kind of thing. Okay, sometimes the guy with the bigger balls is the one that's smart enough to go, not a good idea. Right? If I'm going to take this guy out, it has to be quick. It has to be in a place where by the time people hear the commotion and by the time they look, I'm gone. Okay? So I want to cover as many life-sustaining systems as possible. If you understand your kamae, very few kamae leave you wide open. But here, space is your shield. If I'm properly applying Hiyari Ichimonji, Hachimonji no kamae, Hoko no kamae, that kind of thing, it's the distance. It takes him longer to get there, right? But these things are also traps. All the other ones, right? The correct positioning. This is not a correct jumonji. This is not a correct jumonji. This is a correct jumonji because I'm covering places that the nerves that keep my heart and my lungs going, and access into things that what's on the other side, lungs, right? Or I'm covering the heart and the aorta, that kind of stuff. It's not just this is our cool stance. This is what we do. No. Okay? So again, I want to cover as many life-sustaining things as possible. Just like a lot of us have learned different versions of Hoko. Some people were left to believe that they can just choose whichever one they want. That's my preference. Or you can do it. Or like Doko, right? I've been to seminars where I've heard a student ask somebody else, like I see people like their Doko looks like this, or it looks like this, or it looks like this, or which one's right? Well, I mean, you could do it all those different ways. So you just pick. Bullshit. There's a reason that this hand is in any one of these given positions from a strategic tactical position reference. Otherwise, all you're doing is fucking throwing a weapon outside the fight. That's a huge distance. Okay? So it's not the same. Okay? So with Hoko, yes, there are different versions. This, these kind of things, okay? Even kind of angled things this way, right? But against a knife, if I don't have a jacket or something I can armor up my arms, then hoko looks like this. Okay? I'm willing to take cuts and things here, right? And this shit that people do in like MMA things, it covers your temples so that you don't get knocked out in a certain paradigm. But this does nothing to protect your throat, the rest of you, and you can't hit him unless he gets close enough for you to maybe bump him with an elbow. All of these things are good ideas, but they were developed to be used in a certain paradigm, okay? So with this, I already know, right? I'm going to get cut. I'm going to get stabbed, whatever. My job is not to let that happen. My job is to survive the fight or survive the attack and to not get the movie turned off at the theater before the end. And if I stand like this, when this guy's reaching out there to hack at my arms to get me to pull them away so he can come to everything else, when he cuts this, I'm Spider-Man. Psst, psst, okay? This way, you can cut these things, okay? But these muscles here make your hand do that, make your fingers do this. These muscles make your hand do this, okay? Secondarily from getting cut, that's the primary, not to be leaking all over the damn place, right? Is to protect the muscles that allow me to touch and hit. So I'm going to turn a certain way, and I'm going to rock my fingers away a little bit so that there's more bone for him to go at. Nothing life-sustaining here. Will I get cut? Will I bleed? Yeah. Get cut here, it's a whole different story, okay? So I want to cover as many life-sustaining systems as possible, and I want to be smart about it and not just copy some other guy's thing because he wins things and gets trophies and checks and whatever, okay? Tatsumi Sensei has always said, you need to be able to look at any given technique and know whether in a real life or death scenario, that's a good idea, even if the technique is rough around the edges, even if it needs work. Is that usable? Is that good? Or will that get you killed no matter how good it looks? Okay? I know. Most people don't want to go this far in their training because it's too much fucking hard work. Okay? But once you get it, oh man, the shit that you can see and the stuff you can do. Okay? All right. So next one is I want you to think in more than 2 dimensions. That's a greater than sign. So think in more than 2 dimensions. What that means is this is not just nose to nose, toe to toe. Okay? One of the best pockets of space for that kuden in one of these scenarios is low and as close to his armpits as possible because he has a harder time chasing you down that way, and you have broader muscles. So if he does tag you, nothing's going to leak. You got broader muscles, and you're moving away from him, and you can get behind him, which is harder for him to get at, right? But doing this idea in Kukishindan school, it's called moguri gata. Moguri means to dive or submerge, like a submarine going beneath the water to attack from a different place. So to get under. So it doesn't matter if he's doing this or if he's doing this, okay? If I get down here and get as close to him as possible to wreck those legs, then I can get him into a better position, okay? It's the same thing our kosei is used for. Way too many people high block with a kosei like it's some karate form. I'm not saying you can't, but kosei is a mid-range to close-range seigan, okay? So when he comes in and I get under this, this keeps him from being able to come down more on me. Hoko is just a 2-sided version of the same thing, or kosei is a single-handed hoko. Pick whatever you want, right? But it gets me under this thing. Now, it's going to be very difficult for him to kick me because of the position I'm in. I only have to worry about one weapon. So as I come in here, I hit something in the ribs. His reflex is to take that free arm and cover himself. And the rest is about fighting smarter, not harder. Okay. Number 5. Now I'm just going to write stop him, but here's the qualification. I want to do something, as few things as possible and as quickly as possible, to stop his body's ability to get at me. Way too many people think about winning or losing the fight. That's too fucking big and it's too vague. Okay? I need to understand Kyusho so I can attack things that will make it impossible, or at least extremely difficult, for him to get this machine in my direction, no matter how badly he wants to hack me to pieces. Okay? It's kind of like in the Monty Python movie, the Holy Grail, right? The Black Knight got all his shit cut off. He was a bold motherfucker, right? He was like, come back here, I'll bite your kneecaps off. Except you got no arms, no legs, dude. Talk all you want. You can be as bold as you want. You can be as brash as you want. But if your body, if that machine can't get at me, okay, just a mouth with, well, no legs maybe. Anyway, all right. So I want to stop that functioning. These are priorities in a survival situation, in a life or death kind of thing. It's not about winning the fight. It's not about landing as many shots so the decision's in your favor. It's not about not breaking rules. Okay, it's about making the machine not work. That doesn't mean you have to kill him, but again, based on my experience and my knowledge of the law as a former federal police officer and a military cop, him brandishing this and you believing that your life is absolutely in danger. Where I live, again, I'm not going to have that pissing contest with the guy with you're talking about illegal stuff and what kind of lessons are you passing on to other people, how to survive. That's the kind of lessons I'm passing on. Okay. What I'm telling you is that from my experience in my legal systems, you got to look it up on your own. When somebody comes to me with that, legal force or lethal force is justified, but you need a different skill set to be able to survive the legal system afterwards. You have to be able to articulate on a statement to a cop or a DA or in a court of law how you did whatever that stayed within the self-defense paradigm, so that they don't brand you a vigilante or a killer yourself, or it was a fight and then you have to worry about not being ass raped by 3 guys in a prison shower or whatever. Okay? I know that's brash and a lot of people don't like that either, but you know what? This is life or death. Okay? This is not about ego stroking. People that are all about ego stroking can go stroke something else. Anyway, all right, number 6, worry about damage. Right? Those cuts, those stabs or whatever, as much as possible, don't fucking think about it. Okay? Worry about damage that you're taking afterwards. Okay? Focus on stopping him. Okay? Focus here. Yes, you're going to get cut. It's one thing to say it in the dojo. We have a question for our students at a certain belt rank where we ask, right? What's one thing that you can guarantee when you're dealing with a knife-wielding attacker? And the answer is simple. You're going to get cut or stabbed or whatever, okay? But your job, they can recite it, but it's something completely different to have fudoshin, that immovable heart, where all that matters is nixing this freaking experience in this situation, okay? Because I can get patched up later. And yep, I'm going to have scars. But if I'm thinking about these now and protecting everything, you can't protect everything. And if you're protecting your arms, you're not going to be protecting anything else for very long. And as the Japanese say, you'll be in a situation where you can't do anything about it. So no worries. Okay. And number 7, okay? I'm going to write the word monkey right here, because I'm going to say something that hopefully that'll be your trigger word when you take a screenshot of this thing like you do every lesson, okay? You fight, right? You fight like you were the 3rd monkey trying to get on Noah's Ark and it's starting to rain. Okay? Because there is no backup. There is no talking smack later and asking for a rematch. Okay? You fight with every fiber of your being. One of my teachers gave me this a long time ago, and I never forgot it. In lethal situations, you better be fighting like the 3rd monkey trying to get on the ark, and it's fucking starting to rain. Because when they close that hatch, okay, you drown. Right? So that's what I have. Sorry, we ran over again. God, I got to start cutting these things up into smaller pieces so that you can fit them into your time allotment much better. Anyway, right. So that's what I have on Friday, this Friday, which would be September 6th as I'm doing this. So we're recording this September 4th of 2024. If you're watching this later in the future, going to that link is probably going to put you, it's going to put you on the same page, but that page will be set up for what the current week's lesson will be. Okay. The only way to make that not happen is to get in one of our programs like the Nimpo Masterclass or the Platinum Inner Circle program or whatever, where those students get Tuesday class, Friday class, Zoom every week, recordings if they can't make it to class. There's a whole bunch of other coaching, that kind of stuff. Otherwise, this is an a la carte thing. You do Whiteboard Wednesday, springboards to a Friday class where you're learning techniques that do this stuff. Otherwise, I don't know. Maybe I'll start putting together some micro little channels for people to do things, but I don't know. We'll see. I think that's it, right? So if you have any questions, as long as they're freaking polite and respectful, otherwise I just click hide and it goes away. But if you have those things, if you have a different experience, that's great. I'm not having a pissing contest with people that have different experiences. You have yours, I have mine. I'm also not having a pissing contest with anybody, not even having a discussion with anybody who wants to argue, but they have no experience. I did one of these one time, and somebody posted a comment that said, "This is all bullshit. My brother or my stepbrother's cousin was working at a convenience store and he got attacked by a knife-wielding attacker, and there was nothing he could do." Way too many variables there, dude. Okay. I don't know anything about the situation. Obviously, neither did he, because it was already 3-4 layers deep. But what kind of training did the cousin have? What kind of fear response kicked in? Those kind of things. So I don't have conversations with people like that because they're just trying to throw shit at the wind to shut somebody else down. But they have no skin in the game and they have no experience, right? But ego likes to convince us that we know about shit that we really don't because it sounds logical. Logic inside of these things is often 180 degrees opposite of what sounds logical when we're not in that condition. And the only people who know that to be true are ones who have been in those situations. Okay. So that's what I have. Right. Hopefully this works out. Hopefully, you make it for the class. And if you don't, I just gave you a shit ton of stuff. Every one of these is a variable that can be changed in your training to make sure that you at least have experience with that particular kind of scenario or that particular thing, right? So again, hopefully this works out for you. Hopefully you got value. Leave an aha moment, right? What was the biggest thing that stood out for you other than, look how fat he is? Well, I lost 11 pounds in the last week and a half, so kiss my ass, right? So, but anyway, let's not be juvenile, even though I can slip sometimes too, right? But that's it, right? So hopefully I'll see you in class, and if not, no worries. I will see you next week on the next episode of Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday.